Thanks everybody for coming along. Hands up anyone who's played Abiotic Factor in the audience. Huzzah!
Nice. Thank you.
Excellent. Dr. Feltham, nice of you to make it along today.
Oh, Dr. Jagger, it's a pleasure to be here.
Excellent. Very good, very good. We had a whole idea about a bubble pipe, but unfortunately they're very sticky.
Well,
yeah.
That was my trick.
This is like making a game, isn't it? Best of intentions leads to just a big mess.
yeah. And like shit for other people to clean up.
All right, so.
Serious game devs, eh?
Shall we begin? Yeah, look, thanks everyone for coming. So the idea of today is just to sort of, I guess, get a feel for deep field games in the Abiotic Factor journey. Zag is in the house, was in the house, disappeared. Hopefully he'll be back in a second.
Shiny head.
So I guess kicking off, do you want to just give us a bit of colour as to how the deep field sort of team came together? And you know what people's backgrounds were, you know, joining the studio.
Yeah. I did a talk earlier today about how important it is to tell stories that bind everybody together, and without story you've got nothing. But sometimes actually telling your own story can be quite tricky. I'll start with myself. I was brought on to Rocketworks in Dunedin in 2016 as a narrative designer and a writer, and that was amazing. It was a studio that had an immense creative capability, but almost zero production. And because I'm a narrative designer, I believe that I can't really do my job unless I'm talking to everybody about how their parts of the game work and what I can do to help stitch all that together. In the absence of any producers, I was the one talking to people, and in my own cack-handed way, doing my best to sort of stitch the products into units and get them out the door. And I was the one talking to people, really, and just trying to get people to communicate and all that sort of stuff. And other people, I mean, wasn't the only one, but I was sort of, I think, just by virtue of being the narrative designer or attempted narrative designer, that was kind of what happened by default. And before I knew it, I was basically a producer in sort of state, if not in title. Then Rocketworks attempted to correct that lack of productive capabilities by hiring in Dave Oshry as a producer for a game called Union. And he came along, he brought with him Jeff Keane, who most of you probably know as Zag. And Zag came on as a designer, quite a sort of mid to late stage in that project. And he brought with him Kate Colvin, who is now QA, accessibility lead, and also does a whole heap of our COO duties at Deep Field Games. And we sort of muddled around, and Zag at that point was working on an asymmetric multiplayer social deception game called Unfortunate Spaceman, which is glorious chaos, and had a lot of experience in multiplayer games, and sort of, I think in about 2019 went to 1.0 with that. The exact date fades into the past a little bit. It did really well, I think. It was downloaded about 1 million times. And a little bit later on, Zag went on his way he decided, what's my next project? Union was cancelled, and he did a bit of work on Icarus, and then he went off to do his own thing. And at the end of 2021, I got offered a job writing what was, I think, probably one of New Zealand's most expensive TV shows, or working on that. And I was really ready for that. I'd done 5 years at Rocketworks. I was feeling a bit burnt out. So I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll go and completely burn myself out on a fucking TV show. So I did that. And Zag, meanwhile, had started Deep Field with Kate, with Connor Moran, who is our art director in Canada. Kate and Zag were both then in Dunedin. We had a tech artist attached as well, who also handled a lot of our sort of Steam store backend stuff, for Spaceman, called Jenny Pina, who's in Miami. and is still with us now, and is a tech artist. After I did that TV show with David White, who's my sort of long-standing creative partner in film, and I've been working with for a very long time, and is floating around, and Alex, you know David. I was like, okay, I'm cooked. I'm so cooked. So, I sort of fell over and lay on the ground for a bit, and sort of Zag sort of came and stood over me and went, "Do you want to join the studio?" And I was like, "Fuck, all right." And that was us. That was the core of Deepfield at the beginning, or early 2022. It was me and Zag and Kate and Connor and Jenny. And through a stroke of wisdom that came from a random discussion I had with my father-in-law, who said, look, if you don't have someone who actually knows how to run a business on your team, you're insane. And he said it more gently than that, but that was the gist. We went to Tim Ponting's house. It was just down the road from my house in Dunedin, and threw ourselves on our knees in front of him and said, please come on and be our biz dev guy. Help us, please. And Tim, to our eternal gratitude, said yes. And that was really that was the kernel of Deepfield.
Excellent. And then, so obviously you start thinking about building a new game. So what sort of games was the team thinking of building? Obviously Zag had built a pretty successful prior game, yep. Social Deception multiplayer. Yep. What sort of games, and how did that lead to Abiotic Factor being the game you did make?
Right, so there's a few questions there, I think. And like anybody who's part of Deepfield or who's worked with us, feel free to shout out and just be like, no, Henry, this is not what happened. I would argue that our team has two approaches to selecting games to make. We make vibey co-op games. This is what we do. We love co-op. We'd just come through COVID, and multiplayer games were what kept us sane. You know, this is how we kept up with our friends, people we couldn't see. We played Valheim, we played Sea of Thieves, some of us played Hell Let Loose. These fantastic co-op experiences, and we knew, and there was never, I don't think, really any massive question that our first title would be a co-op game. The other thing I think we do is, it's not rocket science, I don't think I'm spilling any commercial secrets here. We look at existing games and go, well, what happens if you add multiplayer to that? How would that change it? What would that look like? Would it be fun? Would it work? So those are the two questions we ask. And we have a lot of ideas in that realm, and a lot of design documents. There was one we were looking at before, there was a game we were thinking about making. But we were in negotiations with some other people, and it was really slow. So we were like, well, let's not sit on our hands. Let's prototype something, you know? So we did the pitch sessions, we did the scoping sessions. We had about 6 or 7 of them, and I have to completely own that Abiotic Factor got a 1 from me out of 3 or out of 10 or whatever it was. I was like, no, it's too big, it's too hard. We can't do that. And it was like, it'll take 6 months. And I'm like, I'm carving those words on your fucking gravestone, man. But it won. And we went ahead with it, and I think the prototype within well inside 3 months. It was fun, man. It was so fun. It was so vibey. Even the first test level we put together, I feel like the first day we put a test level together, we were like, oh. And it was real rough. It looks a bit like Half-Life, eh? And we were like, it's got a vibe though. It's pretty cool. And that was part of that scoping and pitching process.
And did you have an idea who the audience for the game would be? And how did you go about testing that?
Yeah, absolutely.
And when did you go about testing that?
Well, from the get-go. I don't think, I could dance around the issue, but as far as I'm concerned, if you don't know who your audience is, you're doing it wrong. You can make games for yourself, in which case you are the audience. But the whole, I heard it described as the trust me bro, school of game dev. I'm just going to make this thing. I don't think that really flies anymore. It did, but it doesn't. We had a hunch, that the, actually I'm going to start from this with the biggest points. Survival games are huge. It's the most popular genre, or what was at a certain point. We're not actually massive survival game fans, but we thought this would, we saw that genre and go like, well, what can we bring to this? Because it's huge. I mean, there's obviously, clearly there's an audience there. We love multiplayer. So multiplayer survival, again, like there's an audience there. So what do we do to carve out our own kind of niche in there? Like, well, we like, a little bit of horror, a little bit of cozy, you know, that's a thing. We like, you know, retro as a vibe and an aesthetic, not retro mechanics, but a retro look and feel, connects to an audience that have immense strength and feeling about a certain kind of realm of like source engine games, that kind of thing. And so we just, through that, we were identifying all these overlapping categories that we thought there was a, you know, an interest in and a community to be served. We saw the success of things like Sven Co-op. We're like, yeah, people love this. This is, and we, and you know, and the prototype, like we are really enjoying this. This is fun. So yeah, but us knowing who our audience was, I think it's one thing we did to de-risk really successfully. I think of my job on some level as, and Zag's job, Kate's job, almost everybody's job on the team is to reduce the need for luck.
And how did you go about building the community? How did you get it kick-started and the interest in the game?
Well, we also did a very smart thing, which was we brought on Chris Cross-Gale over there and said like, hey, would you like, because Chris had come out of the States and had been working with streamers and managing like a streamer studio, and we're like, well, now let's actually dedicate somebody to this role. You know, let's actually put like we're serious about this. Let's actually, you know, let's create a marketing and community manager producer position, and we work, and then we decided like, well, what are our strategies here? And we looked around at all the things we thought worked. Code fronted up with travel grants for us to PAX in sort of late 2022, and took us over there with a cohort of other Kiwi games and put us on the show floor at PAX.
I don't think this jacket's been washed since then. Just throwing that.
Like, I can assure you it has not. Those are some original like show floor PAX stains, my friend. My stains. I wore that a lot actually. I was like out at like
I can tell.
PlayStation parties and that. But I think we did some smart things. But like we also got some really smart advice. We took some lessons from like Zero and the way they'd done some really, really smart things. Like we went to PAX, we stood on the show floor, and anybody who walked past our banner, if they caught sight of our art, it means that the art and that retro style had caught their eye. So you pretty much knew that if anyone paused briefly, they were interested and into it, which means you could offer them to like, you know, have a playtest of the game. And we had a really, I think, pretty good early demo considering where we were at in development. I mean, look at it now and you'd be like, oh, for fuck's sake. But it was enough. It gave people an idea of what the offer was. And we had a really tight pitch. We could explain very, very quickly what this was. Like a scientist in an underground lab, you make crazy shit to escape to the surface. But the other thing being, but you're scientists. You're not Gordon Freeman, Doom Guy, Master Chief. You're not. You're a scientist. You're smart, but you're not strong. Like, go, jump in, have a go. And then we took their email addresses. So we built an early mailing list, and then and we said we're going to going to be part of the very first playtest of this, the proper one, where we the proper game. And then we forced them to redeem a key for the playtest inside our Discord. So we captured them there, and that was really like our seed community. And so that's really, I think, where our sort of playtest community started. We did a friends and family before that, but I think that's really where the kind of community took off, And then Chris basically just nourished it, and from there. And also Zag, Zag is massively active in our community, and I think is just a huge voice inside that, which I think is a really, really potent part of the connection that our players feel to our game.
Okay. Enough of the fluff questions. Are we living in a parallel antiverse right now?
Well, I'm glad you asked. In a parallel universe, this is actually filled with something other than bubbles, mate. I'm just going to completely parry that question. Not really. One of the great things about ABF, and again, it was locked into the way we designed it, was that you've got a central set of levels, which is the facility itself, from which you venture out into our dungeons, our antiverses, and because of the way we built the lore, and I need to underscore that we also decided early on we tethered this to narrative very, very hard, and that was scary. And I'll maybe talk about that a bit later. So we could just stitch on anything we wanted. Like, it gave us incredible freedom about the worlds that people could go to and come from. And yeah, we could create a narrative world in our game that would be this, and we could make it make sense.
So how do you keep the scope tight though?
You don't. You don't. I mean,
scope game.
Yeah, I think. And this is the wrong thing to say. So, like, read between the lines on this, or like understand, like, particularly like younger game devs here, like, understand what I'm actually saying, is that, like, scope creep is your friend. We are massively ambitious. We always aim for higher than we can do, but it means we over-deliver. We over-deliver, and I think we've done that at every stage. And I don't want to sound like I'm patting ourselves on the back. I think it's an objective fact that we just tried to do too much, but it means that what you do end up doing is still heaps. It's a killer from a production perspective, but I've slowly come to realize that it's our strength, and I've stopped fighting it and just tried to manage it. I mean, earlier on, I think, like, it was tempestuous and it was hard, and sometimes it hurt. But I came to realize, particularly after 1.0, oh no, wait, this is what we do. So in terms of, like, practical production managing, it's about reviewing continually your production and your backlog to make sure that the most important stuff is at the top, and any information that has changed has been absorbed, and whatever you're working on next is genuinely the highest priority thing. And sometimes that's the best thing. I think it's the best you can do. Yeah,
I mean, were there any particularly hard challenges during the development phase, and how did you get over them?
Yeah, there were lots. There were some crazy ones. There's some ones I can't even really talk about. One day, maybe. One of the really early design challenges, and, like, this is something that Zag poured, I have no idea how much energy and thought into, but solved and really established my trust in him as a designer even further. Like, we created a game where we're inverting the power fantasy. It's about brains over brawn. But early on in the game, we gave people a club, and you could just whack everything to death, and you just progressed way too fast. And it wasn't feeling like you were a scientist. It felt like a guy with a fucking club with nails in it. So Zag would go in again, and again, and again, and look at ways to slow it down, to make it harder, while still giving you that pathway to progress. And, like, what happens if we don't give the player a gun until, like, the 5th hour? What does that feel like? But he solved it, and he would do things like, let's give players left field ways to manage these early challenges. Let's not give them a weapon, So softening that experience and tailoring that, like that as a piece of design took 8 months, longer probably over time. Other challenges. I mean, there's so many. My approach as a producer is just to continually revise the plan. The plan is only as good as your most recent information, and being willing to completely change the plan, so long as there's always a plan, and communicate what those changes are and why. We flip-flopped about whether we were going into early access, I was going to say, like, 3 times, 4 times, to the point we could hear people in Discord rolling their eyes, and I'm like, but explaining why we're doing it, why we're doing it.
Yeah, so I mean, you got code funding and some other early investment, and how did that change? And then you got a publisher at the point where you could have gone to early access. So how did getting the funding at the different stages change, or did it change the vision for the game and what you felt you could achieve?
Yeah, there's obviously a feedback cycle there. There's the money you get and what you think the scope of the game is inside the money that you have then. We got an injection of cash early on from Alt Ventures, but that was, for all we knew at that point, that was all we were going to get. So we wanted to make sure that would last. So you plan for a runway, you pay what you can inside those limits, and you have people working half-time, you make it work for, like, how long you think the game is going to take. But the game keeps changing. The game keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So that, but we knew what our runway was, and we could make that work. Or we certainly thought we could. Then in about June, I mean, I'm going to get the year wrong though, or something like, let's say June 22 as well. On top of that, Alt Ventures funding, we got a code grant, the startup, which is like the 150K fund, which meant we could boost up people's hours. And I think we even brought on another person. That suddenly meant that everything moved faster, which we needed to because we were headed to PAX, we wanted the demo, we're starting to talk to publishers. So it got us to a higher quality, that code grant got us to a higher quality demo, which meant that publishers were like, whoa. So I think there's a direct correlation. There was the security that the Alt Ventures grant gave us, and then there was the kind of like the advantage and the acceleration that the code grant gave us, which then connected to publisher deals at PAX. We came out of that after, I think, end of 2022 with like 3, 4, 5 deals on the table. And yeah, that's how that worked.
And then why PlayStack? Why were they a good fit? Have they been a good fit?
Yes, they have. You didn't know quite how much detail to go into with the sort of internal workings of that kind of thing, but we were actually negotiating with another publisher who we really liked and was really cool. They were a victim of the whole Embracer shitfuck. And it got to a point where I just got the team together at one point and we're like, hey guys, tell me if you think this is crazy, but I reckon we need to just not do that. And it's just we're gonna go down with the ship if we do that. And we're just waiting on an answer that wasn't necessarily even going to come. So it was like, and PlayStack was like, actually my number one the whole time. But also it was like, I work with my team, and if the team really wants this other really great publisher, I'm like, cool, we'll make that work. I'm happy to be outvoted. I loved PlayStack. They're a boutique publisher, or certainly they were. They're moving into the console PC space because mobile games are getting hard. They were a mobile studio though, but they were scoping up, and they were hungry, and they were intense, and they were passionate, and they loved the game. And they'll do things like, they'll go away and have a marketing meeting where they spend 2 hours trying to decide like the best slot for your like streamer video at Next Fest, because they really care. And I vibe on that. Plus, actually, I like the people. I just wanted to hang out with them. I mean, I am a pretty people-y person, but I was like, you guys are cool. Let's hang. Let's make a game. So we just sat down, and as we do, we talked. That deep field internally, like, this is what we see the problem to be. Does anybody disagree with this as a solution? Why? And nobody did. So I rang up Rob Crossley, who thought I was ringing up to break up with him. And it was like, I don't know, he's like, I feel like a baby on his arm. And it was like, Rob, yeah, we'll do it. And then just was like, if you can give me A, B, and C. And he was like, yep. And that was that. And they've been fantastic to work with. Do you want to hear about?
Yeah. I mean, for those who sort of haven't worked with publishers, I mean, just give a bit of a
John Cartwright
for what they do, what you're still doing within the studio, and how the decisions are made about the release dates and roadmap and all those sorts of things.
I really feel like you just need a John Cartwright speech for that. Is he here? Yeah, there we go. John is much better on this than I am. There's all sorts of different publishers in the universe, eh? We liked them because they trusted us. They came on board because they liked the vision. We also did some boundary settings, particularly around marketing. Like, marketing syncing with your publisher seems to be one of the most dodgy, dicey, potentially ruinous avenues. But if you've got the communication and you're willing to be really clear, and you're also like, okay, we didn't like that, and here's why, and you're respectful, and you're slightly more American than Kiwi about it, I think that can be cool. But that was actually a bit rugged at times, eh? Yeah, but again, we got there. It was like syncing on what the tone of our marketing is, and wanting our marketing to be in and of the tone of Abiotic Factor. But they got that to the, and they were really, really active. Like they're really just absolute like evangelists for us. They're going out there and talking to people and getting people involved with us, and providing solutions when we don't have them. And they've got a wonderful like internal like video development capabilities and a dedicated marketing manager who's just worked with us. So it's been fab. Plus they've gone from strength to strength as well, which I think is good for their, like, I think we're good for them and they're good for us. So they bring up Balatro and then ABF. They're feeling really confident, and they're confident, I think, in their own choices of games, which is good, I think, for a publisher.
Okay. You mentioned Tim Ponting earlier. Is he really the puppeteer?
Well, I mean, clearly Tim Ponting is the model for like more than half of our characters. And he's a man of myriad capabilities, and he's sort of like a human walking colour, Technicolor Dreamcoat, right? So we just have to siphon off little elements of Tim to inspire almost everything we do. The puppeteer is like, well, sort of a lonely god, right? And Tim is not lonely.
He's not. No.
He's not. No, he's only one of those things.
Excellent. So if you could change one thing through the process, looking back, what would it be that would have made things easier or streamlined things?
Yeah, there's many answers to that, I think. My general take on the universe is that it's your mistakes as much as your successes that have brought you to here, and if you're happy where you are, shut the fuck up. I don't believe in regret unless it's something that you can change. Regret is just something you alter your behavior in the future around. And God knows we do a lot of that. But in terms of the past, no, I wouldn't change very much. I mean, there's a couple of things. Maybe. I was talking to Zag about this, and he was saying, look, I think, we could have hired for some roles a little earlier. I think particularly with, even if it takes, Steam money 3 months to get into the bank before you even see $1, we could have got into like, another 3D artist a little earlier, another QA person possibly, production capacity, someone to support me so that I could do more of the sort of upper level business stuff and then the narrative stuff, which we've done now, and it's great. It's actually, oh my God, it's amazing. Someone said, I forget her name, but she's a very, very good Australian producer. The first thing you do, if you can as a studio, hire a producer. I'll be like to producers, the first thing you can if you're a producer, hire a producer for you. The other one is, I kind of want to tell a little story without giving too much away. I think when you're working with a game that has as strong an element of homage as ours does, you need to be very careful about where that line is. And even if makes complete sense, maybe just shy a little bit away from that line, right? Because it can just get a little bit messy, and it's fine now. But that caused us a little bit of strife at one point.
And then, I guess, it'd be good to give everyone a little bit of a taste of, what's to come, not in the detail, but what's the future for Abiotic Factor. And then what do you think the future is for Deep Field Games beyond this? Yeah, right. Well, the upshot, one of the many upshots about a game growing as fast as Abiotic Factor did and is still growing, is that you start to trust your decision making. Your design decisions. Like, okay, cool. We've got this community and we can grow it. And it also sinks into like the design decisions we made early on about having sort of this quite modular level design, so we can really add in as much content as we want forever. And if people are still keen for it, I think we're going to keep supporting it as long as we're into it and we feel like we've got stories to tell. And my God, we've got a lot of stories to tell. We start thinking, we know where 1.0 is, and we're thinking beyond that. And some of the stuff we would like to do, like post 1.0, oh my God, it's so good. So I think we're going to keep rolling with that. Hopefully get it onto some other platforms. That'd be nice. Take it out to the world a bit. Extend localization some. But mainly it's about just continuing to develop the Abiotic Factor world, sticking to our timeline. I think when you go into early access, obviously the real trap is people being like, you had this roadmap and you're not on it anymore. So like sticking to that as much as you can and communicating very, very clearly any changes and why. But we are still on track for our roadmap, at least like I think within any reasonable measure. So just following that roadmap, getting these updates out, getting out the next installation with
like dark energy, it's called. We're going down deep into the bowels of the facility, and eventually, like, find a way, like, to conclude at least this version of the story because we know where it's going. It's real cool. Like, it's so much fun. I love the story in our game, and people love the story in our game. So serving that and developing it, yeah, that's the big thing. Beyond that, at some point, I guess we will start having to think about another game, but that's probably a little way off, and we've got no lack of ideas. You know, we'll just steal another game and add multiplayer to it. Imagine if you put multiplayer in Valheim. How cool would that be?
And I guess from the studio perspective, and probably this is also definitely is also for Zag, you know, from the senior team perspective, what, about a dozen people or so now? Is that?
It's a little bigger than that.
Yeah, but you think you're at the perfect size in terms of what you're?
I think by the end of next month we will be at the size we need to be for 1.0, as far as I can tell. Then inevitably when you start, if and when we start thinking about another game, you've got to have, like, you've got to start dividing your teams. So I imagine we'll grow a little bit more then. But that question still feels like a wee way off, you know. It's at a point now where I think we can manage the team at the size we're at. We've you know, we've got the external partners that we need. So I'm pretty happy. I'm not a big fan of working in huge studios. I don't like working with more than 20 or 25 people. It gets messy. I mean, not messy, but it's not my cup of tea. But I think there's a negotiation and like, you know, and sort of discussions to be had about, like, what that looks like for us. But I think we're roughly, you know, we're never going to be like, you know, 100 people ever. Like, this is not on the cards. I really like the way Iron Gate do it. You know, they like this. What is good for the game? What does the game need? And if the game, you know, if we can keep it fairly tight, I think there's a real benefit to that, to keep that flame going. Wait, one thing I wanted to do, actually, just while I'm here, is just, like, shout out every single game that influenced Abiotic Factor. Just, like, thank you to like I don't know, to Valheim, to Minecraft, to Subnautica, to Sea of Thieves, to Hell Let Loose, just to every single one of those games that we were like, hey, this is awesome, they've got this great thing here, is this something, can we take some inspiration here and meld something, is this going to work? And there were the things we tried that were like, no, that's not going to work. But I guess I just want to shout out our debt to all these other fucking genius creative producers who have influenced us and inspired us, and it's really just the fun is now just being sort of part of that story. Like if Abiotic Factor and Deep Field could just be like a little footnote in the yet to be told story of multiplayer gaming across the ages, that would be quite something.
And then what piece of advice would you have for other, I guess, Kiwi studios that are building games earlier in the journey, based on the journey you've been on?
Yeah. One of the things I'm most proud of as a studio is that we did this remote, 100% remote. We now have people in pretty much every single time zone. I would say don't be afraid of remote. I fully acknowledge that the remote studio hybrid situation, that's really hard, but maybe consider, particularly if you're setting up a studio and you want access to talent, people around the world. There's a million creative people in places. If you can just manage the time zones a bit, like, remote studio existence is doable. And I'm perfectly happy to talk to anybody here. I will give you my card and I will talk to you about it until Zag tells me to stop and do my job. Because I feel like it's not necessarily the future, but it's a way of working that gives access, particularly to people in New Zealand who can't attract incredible talent to, like, Dunedin or even Auckland. New Zealand is this wonderful halcyon country in the South Pacific that is like, this is wonderland, but no one actually is going to move here necessarily because it's a long way away and the ping is shit, you know? So yeah, there's that. Don't be afraid of remote. Trust yourself. Trust your instincts. Trust is really important. It's difficult to overstate how grateful I am to work with Jeff Keane. And it all comes down to trust. I trust his instincts as a designer. You know, I don't have to ask, is this going to work? Is this a bad idea? Because he knows if it's a good idea or a bad generally. I just have to ask whether we can, when we can. You know, and it's a good problem to have. It is a problem. Like liking all your designers' ideas as the producer there's definitely a downside to that. Yeah, trust your team. Hire for self-direction. Hire for self-management. Like that's probably like I guess I go back and forwards on whether like culture fit, or self-management is my number one hiring criteria. I probably lean on self-direction more because it has to be that way for us. You come in, you do stand up, we give you everything, we feedback on all your tasks, and then you go away and you do it, and then you communicate inside Slack, you know, and you talk about any issues you have, and we will get back to you as fast as you can. And if you need to, we'll get in a chat. We make a joke that 2025 is going to be the year of no DMs. Like everything is visible, everything is in the channel, everything is in the place it's discussed. Be very, 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 very clear about your pipelines. Always be improving your pipelines. Pounce on errors. Like I'm fully acknowledge I'm not always the best at that. Which is why we've just hired an associate producer to do the shit that I suck at. Pounce on errors, because that's a kink in a pipeline. Don't blame anybody, but just sort it out. Like don't let shit slip, because it can't, because it accumulates, and it's for want of a better word, it's bad. And these are, I guess, all particularly remote. That's the context of remote work. Yeah, be very, very clear on your pipelines, and be clear and candid and kind.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations as well on the Golden Joystick nomination.
Hey!
Phenomenal.
Yeah, did you guys hear about this?
Please go and vote. I think voting's still open.
I mean, there's no way, right? So we were nominated for a Golden Joystick, which is the oldest video game award in the world. We're up there for like best multiplayer game, which still blows my mind. We're up against Helldivers. so we are totally going to be those people at the Oscars going, it's just a pleasure to be nominated, because it really is.
So the doors are locked until you've all voted.
Yeah, that's one of those things where it's like after all this time and stuff, I just am just so genuinely excited and amazed. I wish we could have been nominated for Best Early Access Game, though. We actually have a chance. Because it's voted for by players. We don't have 20 million players. Yet.
Exactly. We've got about 10 minutes left if people have any questions. You know, obviously for Dr. Feltham here.
Any questions from the front row?
Keen's in the audience as well. Annette Garrick might be in the audience, we don't know.
Tim, you promised to heckle me, mate. Big words, big talk.
Hey there, how's it going? So I just wanted to make a quick question falling back on your points on slowing down the gameplay and how you went into there, or rather one of your colleagues did, and you just kept going over it and over and over it. And I just want to know, who was responsible for the staplers?
Yep. The stapler debacle of 2024, fuck yeah.
Oh, we went through the fog far too many times to get staplers up until further in on, and it was a huge bottleneck. So whoever did that on purpose, well done. That definitely slowed things down.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you do actually make these very, very, like, it's a design decision that works, and we always wanted to encourage traversal backwards and forwards into other zones. And some of that stuff might have been a little cack-handed at points. But then we put the coworker in, and he shit staplers. You're welcome.
Sometimes. Finding him is also another story. But another question would be moving forward, once you guys get to 1.0 and further expanding the world and other things like that, what else might you end up adding as little extra tidbits, little extra aliens, crafting recipes, anything that you might shed some light on for the future?
Oh, I can't tell you. I'm sorry.
Secrets.
Like Zach would actually just leap across and like throttle me. What could I actually tell you? There is lots of, like, we're starting to try and foreshadow a lot of that stuff. Like, and like in our next update, we're going to be hinting in that direction. Like, we want to make sure because we know where it's going. So our capacity to embed some of that like long range stuff is getting better and better. And there's even hints of it in the Halloween update too. But it's all will become clear-ish.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for playing.
Hey, kind of talking about the same sort of topic, but from a slightly different angle. I think you mentioned that it took 8 months overtime to deal with the problem of the player being too powerful early on for a designer.
Yeah.
Given that you're all remote, how do you deal with things like crunch and burnout and like people spiraling onto the same problem for 19 hours and hurting themselves?
That's always going to be a problem, and it sometimes still is when you realize that somebody's been just grinding on something. It comes down to communication, implementing this really regular communication. Monitoring fairly closely what's happening, hiring extra production capacity to monitor that even further, making sure people aren't just grinding their gears, being very, very clear to people about when to communicate, when they're stuck. Saying if you've been doing this, giving people sort of a rough time frame. If you're doing it for longer than this, reach out. If you hit some problems, reach out, and making that okay. We've got a programmer who's fantastic. She's based in Malaysia, but she just wants to win. Sometimes she wants to beat it, and we'd be sitting there going no, Mira, no, don't. You don't have to beat it. Reach out. It's there's not one of you. There's three of you, but it's a continual challenge because if someone's not actively in Slack or not typing in Slack or in Discord at that second, you don't know. You take it, but it comes down to that trust thing as well, and communication, and really, really good pipelines, and more communication, and again, not DMs. Do it in public, and putting little. We still run on Trello. We're such muppets. Putting a little Trello checklist in that says, post your findings in this channel, and as a step, so that you can ensure that the discussion happens and is visible.
That's really good, actually.
Hi. Just to add to that as well about remote working, do you exclusively pick seniority roles?
No.
No? And then how do you sort of, maybe trust is the wrong word, onboard or keep the education side up for the younger talent and yeah?
Again, it's a challenge, but also I think senior roles, particularly just this very instant, are less likely to be flexible to remote in the same way as junior roles who aren't perhaps as sort of inculcated to the way things should run. So also they have probably more flexible with their time as well. They're saying I need you to start at 7 a.m. and work till 3. And are you okay with that? We also believe in because we're getting pretty good with our pipelines and our culture and how we operate. Bringing in juniors has become easier. And we know how to hire now, I think. So there's that mix of younger people being more flexible and trainable into the way we need them to operate, versus the risk that comes with being very, very busy and not being able to train them enough. As well as burnout, the fact that as younger people we got Fee here, who is the room you work in and the room you sleep in, it might be the same room, and I guess the mental health stuff that comes just with basically not getting out enough, which I really worry about, because I have the luxury of having an office in my house, because I'm middle class white guy in his 40s, but that's not most of our team. Our team is very. It's pretty diverse, but it means that you've got there's a lot of potential edge cases for the way people are living and existing under those remote conditions. I don't think we've solved all of it. I just think we're doing okay.
Sounds good. Thanks.
A couple more over here.
Every time someone puts their hand up, I pretend it's a high five. Thanks. Cheers, Wade.
Yeah, thanks. So still on the theme of remote work, you mentioned about how it's easier having 100% remote as opposed to a hybrid model, and especially introducing the concept of like remote workers being overseas. Were there any particular challenges around, like, I guess, employment law and taxes and how you work around that? Like, is everything...
Yeah, but we hired Wade Pearson,
What's
and
that?
he fixed all of it.
Sorry, I missed that.
Wade's the lawyer, maybe he's the puppeteer.
I mean, I'm not joking. Like, we've had some very, very good advice from Wade, and that went a long way to guiding us and clarifying, because it's tricky. But having a specialist like games entertainment lawyer on your side, who's also like a passionate gamer, has been for that sort of thing has been very, very useful. There's some really simple stuff, and Tim is also very, very up on this. Kate is very up on this, and it's about reading and research. All of the people who aren't working in New Zealand are technically contractors, but we treat them as if they have all the benefits of being salaried employees in New Zealand.
Right.
So it's trying to make it work, but be fair. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I just say that if Gate had adopted a remote working policy, this whole game might not have happened.
We'd all be dead.
I think we've got one more. Time for one more question, and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, the little countdown thing here's gone red. High five.
Yeah.
Means the robots come
Last
out, right?
question.
Yeah.
So my question, you compared the player character to normal game characters and emphasized that they're a scientist. I would just like to ask, don't you think that Gordon Freeman is a highly trained professional and doesn't need to hear this?
There's a fucking note to end on. Nice. I also like, this is just an observation. Of course, as you progress through the game, inevitably you do power up, and it becomes, less and less of the power fantasy necessarily intervenes. But we'll still find ways to like break you down.
Nice. Well, look, thank you so much, everyone, for coming.
Thank you.
Congratulations to Zag and the team. Look, the game's not done yet. I think only maybe half, not even half, is even available. There's a lot to come. But it's great to see another Kiwi studio with a great team doing cool things, another success for Code. Yeah, it's just awesome to keep seeing. So keep it up, keep up the good work.
Don't have old ventures,
Dr.
mate.
Feltham, I'm out of bubbles. So on that note,
Until next time, Dr. Jagger.
round of applause for Deepfield.
Cheers, guys. Thanks heaps.